one of these days you're going to get caught making faces at me, and we're going to go live at that moment, and that's going to be what is going to be the screenshot that gets shared on LinkedIn. I'm just saying.
It might have to make a blooper reel if you can actually catch it one of these times.
That would be pretty funny. That's all I got to say. Yeah. Anyway, hey, Jeff, good to be with you again today on Inflection Point Moments for the Power of Balance, which that might have been why you were making faces at me, because of the whole issue of balance.
Yep. It is an issue I think everyone deals with at some point in their life and their career, of just how do you balance and keep all the balls in the air and not dropping any of them.
That's very true. And I love the fact that you just said not dropping any of them, because balance means so many different things at so many different points in your life. And we talk about keeping all the balls in the air as a business owner and all the things that you're responsible for as a business owner. But there's also the fact that it's not just work where we have balls that we need to keep in the air. So I'm just going to open things up by challenging you and saying, what if instead of dropping a ball, you put it down for a period of time? You made a choice to say, okay, this thing that I could keep in my juggling act and keep going around and around and around with the juggling with it, what if for a period of time I didn't pick that one up? Now, I'm not sure what that thing would be that you're going to decide to put down, but there could be a multitude of things that we have on our list of things we have to juggle that we might say, for right now, I'm going to put that one down. So let's talk about what exactly is balance, and why are we talking about that when we're talking about working in our energizers and knowing what it is that we need to be doing in our business. And before we do any of that, let's invite anybody who's on with us actually live during the live stream to let us know they're here with us. So let us know. Say hey. Tell us where you're from. If you're not somebody from the Columbus area, we'd love to know that we have somebody with us. It makes us feel better that we're talking to somebody other than just each other, which quite frankly is a lot better than talking to yourself, which I almost had to do last week. But yeah. So as people decide to let us know they're with us in the chat, Jeff, what do you think of as balance? Nothing like asking the big $64,000 question.
I know. I'm afraid I'm going to get the answer wrong.
I don't think my answer to this is there is no answer to this question.
That is very, very true.
Constantly changing.
When I think of balance, what comes to mind is the whole scales.
Mm-hmm. Okay, say more.
The scales somewhat weighted together, if that makes sense. I mean, there's sometimes that certain things are going to be heavier than others.
Sure.
Which might mean at times you need to take something off the heavy side in order to get that balance back. And I think the other thing is balance is in the eye of whoever's dealing with that, right? What looks like balance to me, someone else might think looks like very unbalanced to them, and not the way that they would want to do something. So, I think so often it's a little bit subjective, but it comes down to what are your priorities at the point where you're at in your life, and those things can change. My priorities many years ago before kids were a lot different than they are now.
It's a funny thing how that works. And I just want to say before I go on, hello, Devon. So good to have you with us. Devon's an old friend of mine, and I'm really glad that she's joined us today for this. I actually had a text conversation with her about a week ago. Well, actually, she was texting me. I really didn't do a whole lot of texting her back. Sorry, Devon. But because she saw this topic and it was something she wanted to learn about, because she's got somebody she's talking to that is working on what balance looks like for them. So I love that you said it has to do with your priorities, because that is absolutely true. And our priorities do shift through our lifetime depending on what season of life we're in. I mean, like you said, when you had children, your priorities shifted because your balance had to look different because you had children. You had to manage in that whole balancing act. And
Yeah.
as business owners, what an interesting thing to think about is that sometimes we start a business because we want to spend more time with our family. We want to make our family a higher priority than what we feel like we're able to do when we're in the world of working for somebody else. But oh, that can be a tricky space.
Maybe just a little.
Oh, that's a lot tricky space because for some people, they trade one job for another. They trade working for someone else for a job instead of being the owner of the business themselves. And quite frankly, the boss you have when you are working for yourself and the person never lets you take a day off or think about anything other than the business, that boss is unreasonable and it's you. So I don't want to go down that road because we could go all down that road and we'd totally lose our focus of talking about what balance is. But once you know what your priorities are, that makes it so much easier to identify what balance looks like for you. What I think is absolutely fascinating about this whole topic, and when Jeff, when you and I were talking about, okay, so this month, what different things do we want to talk about? And balance came up as one of the topics. I found it fascinating because, well, I've been around a little longer than you have. Let's just, okay, a lot longer than you have. But work-life balance has been an issue for decades. I remember doing a workshop at a convention in the late 80s. Now, people are going to go, oh, wow, look how old she is, because she was doing a convention when she was in the late 80s. I'm not in my late 80s, just for the record. But this topic has been a struggle for people who are working for decades and decades. So it's not a new challenge, but here's where I think we're starting to think a little differently about it. Instead of thinking about the scales needing to be fully balanced, you talked about the scales earlier. And so, the scales can be equal like this, and that maybe happens 1% of the time. And if your goal is to constantly be at that equilibrium of work and home and sorry, of your work life and your personal life being equal all the time, you are going to be frustrated all the time because the reality is that's not how it works.
That is very, very true. It's not,
So,
and so many people drive themselves crazy, I think, trying to get that to even out. And
mhm.
I don't know that it's ever going to be even between
No,
home and business ownership or home and working for someone else. There's always something that's going to compete for your time, and we
true.
all, at the end of the day, doesn't matter how poor, rich, own a business, don't own a business, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. There isn't,
Are
you
you
can't
kidding?
time.
That's absolutely true. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. What are we going to do with it? And how are we going to set boundaries so that when we're in one space, we're in that space, we're present where we are? Now, some days that's easier than others. I mean, it might be that there is a huge project that you have for work. I know, Jeff, you can't relate to this at all,
No,
but it could be whatever. That there's a huge project for work and you need to really zone in and get it done. So it may be that all the things from the standpoint of the family need to go back burner. You may have to have your partner take over some things that you ordinarily would do in your family life because you have to focus. on getting this thing done. Or it may be that something happens in your family and work needs to take a back seat for a period of time. Obviously, if regardless of whether you work for someone else or whether you have your own business, it can't take a back seat forever. That's not possible. But maybe for the next half a day or for the next 24 hours, you can send a note to everybody you had an appointment with and say, hey, I've had a major emergency come up in my family and can you give me 24 hours? I need to focus right now so that we can get things back in equilibrium, and I will be sure to take care of you when we get back to it. I will be back in touch in the next 24 or 48 hours or whatever you need to say. But setting boundaries on this is really important. It's critical. It's a critical factor. So we were talking before we got on, Jeff. I was kind of teasing you. I know that's hard to believe. But we were talking about the fact that you've now taken on a new role. Well, you're in the process of taking on a new role. So you're not only the business owner, you're not only the partner in launching the hub, but you also are now going to be a middle school lacrosse coach for your son's team. So that means you're making a commitment to set a boundary that during this time period, Monday through Friday, you're going to be at the school working with the team for a period of time.
Yep.
So what does balance look like in that situation?
Well, for me, it's really about managing the time commitments. So I know what time practice is every day, when it'll be. And for me, it was blocking my schedule that I will have drive time to get to the school to be able to do that every day.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of time that's blocked out that I won't be taking client calls, client meetings. That's my priority during that season. And it doesn't mean that client stuff will get dropped. It just means that my availability is going to be shrunk a little bit. Or, in case of some, balance, there might be emails that I respond to later at night instead of during the afternoon. So there's.
I know what that looks like. Yeah.
Rhonda got that after, what was it, last week? I had kind of a busy week, and Rhonda had sent me a number of emails about the hub, and most of my responses came probably when she was in bed. And she said that she got up the next morning and saw a whole bunch of emails from me in her inbox. But, I think that's a good example of, some balance. I had some time commitments for several days during the week, kind of normal, I'll use air quotes, work hours.
Right.
I was not on email. I was with clients doing client-driven things and not worried about my inbox. And for me, that was some time for me to catch up after my kids were in bed for the night because they had school the next day. So the house was quiet, and I popped open my computer while I was watching, I don't know if I was watching sports or some TV show in the background, and just, getting through those for me, because part of that balance is I've got to feel like I'm in control of my time. And how many emails that had stacked up wasn't a good feeling going into another day that I knew I was going to have another pretty busy day on my schedule and not a lot of time to make up for that. So I think, when we talk about balance shifting and looking different in different seasons of life, different, even day to day, that's kind of how I manage my balance. The other thing that comes to mind about balance, and this is probably going to make you laugh and wonder, how does Jeff's mind get to there? When I think of balance, the Libra scales, for the zodiac sign, and every time I think of that, because that's when my birth month is, I fall into that. Do you remember Cleo from way back in the day that did the card readings on TV?
I'm sorry, I don't. I know I'm disappointing you, but
you've got to look it up because
Okay.
she have a saying, and I think it was on like TV commercials, and she was a psychic or something, and she'd say, "You're a Libra, ain't you, darling?" That's how she'd kick off her telephone things when she'd do these readings. I don't know. I'm gonna have to find the Miss Cleo ads from way back to be on.
Cleo. Yeah, you're going to have to email that to me. Oh, wow. So, Jeff, we've been talking about priorities when it comes to this, and I'm so glad that you have this. You're going to go look at that for me right now. That's hilarious. But not only do we have to think about our priorities from this standpoint, but how do our values play into this? Because when you took on this role with the lacrosse team, you didn't just do that because you didn't have enough things to do on your calendar. God knows that's not true. You did it because there were values underneath that were driving that decision. And how we define balance and where we put our balance at any given time is driven by our values. So, do you think you can identify the value that made you say, yeah, when they approached you and said, Jeff, are you willing to be an assistant coach on the lacrosse team? What were the values that were driving that?
I think
No pressure.
yeah, I know. We didn't talk about this before, so way to put me on the spot. I think, for me it was when the team reached out that they would need some help this season, uh,
Okay.
in order to help out. And last season I helped out in other ways,
Hmm.
that were a little bit different. And for me, as I started to learn more just about the game, the rules, and just being around it a little bit more and seeing kind of um, the program at this particular school, what they're really focused on, which is creating good, not just good lacrosse players, but good students with academics, good community members. That stuff kind of resonated with me because sports is a way to teach some of those things, but it's not
Right.
end all be all. And that stuff's important. So when there was kind of an opportunity to help out, at the end of last season, I said, hey, when it gets a little closer to the season, let me know if you still need to, I can fill in this way. I'd be happy to, do some other tasks, whether it was running the scoreboard at home games, keeping, stats, which that's kind of stressful in and of itself with the number of things that you track in a lacrosse game.
I
Not
can
my first
imagine.
preference of ways to help out, but I'd helped out last year. When they had some shortages of parents that were able to do that. I had done it once, so I kind of just jumped in and said I'm willing and able to help wherever.
Hmm.
And for me, it's a way to help teach more about the game and get closer to the game and helping develop really great student athletes that are good community members too.
Yeah. So, what I'm hearing is that you value community, you value um, using your skills to help other people. So basically helping. I mean, you use the word help a lot. And so you value contributing to the other people that are involved in this process. That
Yeah,
those
that,
value there's a lot of values that could be involved in this, but those were the ones I really heard you talking about. And the other one that you didn't mention, but I have no doubt is part of the process, is your value of family. Because I know you, Jeff, and you value your family extremely highly. Your family is extremely important to you, and this is a way to engage with your son. It happens to be your son in this situation. Engage with your son in something he's interested in to support the ability of that program to continue so that he has that program to be part of.
yeah,
So, you
that's
know,
fair.
there's the surface value that you can see immediately looking at it. And then there's those underlying values that are driving everything we do. And finding balance is always shaped by what our values are, because how we define balance and how we live in balance for us, because everybody's definition of balance is different. We can help somebody think about balance, but they're the one that has to define balance for themselves. Doing understanding your underlying values that are driving it will help you be more able to understand how you define balance in any given situation, and also know the core of what balance means for you. Because when you get out of balance, there's just things that don't feel right. You're off kilter. You might not even be able to tell somebody why you're off kilter, but you are off kilter, and it's just miserable. If you know those core values, and that's something that we're going to talk about with our members of the Inflection Point Hub, of course. I mean, maybe we'll discuss that at some point in Inflection Point Moments, but we're definitely going to be talking what are your values in the Inflection Point Hub, because the more self-awareness you have of these kinds of things, the more you can effectively lead yourself and lead others. Because in order to lead others, you got to be able to lead yourself first. That's just how it works.
And I think the other benefit of that is if you have to make hard decisions, you're at a crossroads and you really understand some of that, it becomes I won't say easy, but it might become slightly easier because you can see the path forward, knowing that you're in a particular situation that doesn't align with what you believe and your personal values on the way things should work, or the things you really value as being important. I know for me, I had that at one point in a corporate role. I got to a certain point and looking around, realized that the values of the particular part of the organization I was in and my personal values were not aligned. And I made a decision to leave because it just wasn't worth, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Is that what they say?
I love that expression.
It just wasn't worth it. And it's like with having those core values, and there was a whole balance component of that too, that ties into this, there just wasn't a whole lot of balance at that point in my life either. And a lot of things that didn't align from a values perspective. So, I made a very big change and decided to leave, that particular role, and that it was time to move on for a multitude of reasons. And it was, probably one of the best decisions I've ever made professionally, for one, and for two, getting back to the balance and, the core values of what's important to me has made a world of difference of not feeling that off kilter all the time.
Absolutely. And the being able to live into your core values in a more effective way, it just frees you up to be able to serve your customers more effectively, to be able to be present with your customers and find solutions for them, not to mention the fact to be present with your family, present with your friends, be engaged in whatever you're doing in a much deeper way than you could if you're off kilter on that balance. So, you think that balance is like, yeah, whatever. But really, if you can find the right balance for you in this season of your life, whether that be, okay, so there's a big project at work and you're going to have to say, honey, I need you to be the one who's, always picking up the kids from daycare. I don't know, whatever. Because for the next 2 weeks, we got this big thing going on, and I'm responsible. I have to be there. Or I remember specifically when my sister-in-law was getting her master's. She's a teacher, and she was getting her master's, and they had 3 kids. And that was a big, and online was not what it is today when my sister-in-law was doing this. Online education was not what it is today. And so my brother-in-law had to, obviously, now you know this is part of my husband's family, had to be responsible for the laundry and the cooking and a lot of the stuff that they would have shared responsibility for before. But because she was in that season of getting the master's degree, he picked up the slack on tons of stuff that he wouldn't have ordinarily done. That's the kind of balance example of a season that you're going to do something differently. Or for those who are more in my age range, there may be elderly relatives that you need to step up and help them in ways you didn't ever have to do before. But it takes a lot of your time to do those things, and you need to do it. You want to do it, but
Yeah.
it's just the balancing changes in those kinds of seasons. So whether it's work related or whether it's personal related, there's going to be seasons where things just have to shift. It just is what it is.
Yeah. And I think that's the important part is, really defining what that balance means for you.
Right.
And the power is when you find that balance and when you can identify that you're out of balance and know what you need to do to get back to whatever balance looks like for you.
Exactly. Because and okay, so this is just really kind of going off on a tangent in a way, but we've been talking about people who have families and children and responsibility for others. Even somebody who is a single person who has friends that they, their core group of people that they engage with in this season of their life is their friends. They should always, of course, still engage with their parents because, your parents still want to have you around. Just saying, as somebody who's had children who left the nest, I'm just saying. I'm actually picturing a friend of mine in my mind as I'm thinking about this. But even when you are that young person who is a single, you still need to have some balance in your life. Maybe you have the capacity to work 18 hours a day, but is that the best way for you to contribute in the world? Maybe if you work for Twitter or Tesla, maybe. But even then, you're not getting your best contribution from yourself because you need a balance of being in the productive workspace and doing other things that balance you out so that when you come back to your work, you can be more effective and productive. So I'll just climb down off my soapbox on that one.
Just a small soapbox.
That's really a big soapbox, but
Yeah,
whatever.
that was not a good sarcasm. Apparently, it didn't work.
Yeah, it was, yeah. So as a business owner, I just want to connect what we've just talked about this whole time to our excitement for the next month as we prepare to launch the Inflection Point Hub. Because one of the things that we'll be doing as we are focused in our starting point series during the Inflection Point Hub, when we start, hence the term starting point, is we're going to be helping people sort through this by providing them with some self-awareness tools so that they can understand for themselves what balance looks like, what their values are, what their priorities are, what their personality looks like, and how they lead, and they can understand what they're doing instead of just kind of doing what they're doing, and they're going out of a non-aware way of living it out. That's one of the things we're going to be doing in the Inflection Point Hub as a community, understanding ourselves better so that then we can be a more effective leader in our company. So to find out more about that, go to inflectionpointhub.com. And I don't know about you, Jeff, but I'd love to see people join us there. because it is going to be a great experience.
Yeah, I'm super excited. It's something that's been in the works for several months, pulling everything together that's going to be inside the hub, along with the content and the access to Rhonda and I together, both working together with business owners on these issues to help them grow their small but mighty businesses. So we'd
Absolutely.
love to see you in on the hub. And you can check out the inflectionpointhub.com and put in your membership application to join us.
Absolutely. Okay, Jeff, next week we are going to be talking about community. So I'll see you then. And we hope that people join us for next week's conversation.
Sounds good. See you then.
All right. Take care.